I know alles.
How's it going, everybody? This is Hippo. I hope you're having another great day, and welcome back to another video. Alright folks, it's time for another top 5 video, and for this one, I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite board games. Now obviously, these are very popular when you were a kid, but heck, even as an adult, you can still have some fun with board games, even though I usually don't play as much of them anymore. But either way, at least growing up, these are the 5 board games that I've considered to be my overall favorites. Now obviously, when you were a kid, other than video games, board games are usually some of the more popular games that you can play with your family, you know. There's a whole bunch of them, you know, popular games like Candyland or, you know, Mousetrap, or a whole bunch of other popular board games out there, you know. You name it, heck, even Monopoly of all games, there is a chance that you have likely played it at some point in your life. And trust me, they are extremely popular, you know, at parties or even at clubs, all that stuff. Trust me, even nowadays, board games are still played quite a bit. Now, board games are obviously not as popular nowadays as they were in, let's say, like the late 1990s or the early 2000s or stuff like that. But trust me, I still remember playing board games a lot when I was a kid. And literally, it doesn't matter, you know, whether you pick one up at a Toys R Us or at a nearby retail store or stuff like that. Trust me, there are quite a number of board games that I remember playing that I have become very fond to. And these 5 that I'm going to present to you here are 5 of my overall favorites. Now, number 5 may not be technically considered as a board game, however, it definitely does play like one. It is called Twister. Now, this is obviously one of the more physical board games there is out there, because obviously, unlike in other board games, you're not just playing with your hands, you're playing with the rest of your entire body as well. And trust me, there are a lot of mixed up stuff that happens here with this game. Obviously, the objective is that you're playing on a mat in which there's about 4 or 6 rows of at least 4 or 6 colors. I forget exactly like how many of each, and ultimately you have to put either one part of your body, whether it's your hand or your feet, on a certain color on the part of that particular mat. And basically you're going up against 2 or 4 other people, and ultimately it's basically the last man standing. So basically, if you are the last one standing when everybody else falls out, you basically win the game. I basically first fell in love with Twister pretty much around the early 2000s, and even though I do not remember playing it since the mid 2000s, I can guarantee you right now, it was a very popular game. And even though it's definitely not considered a board game by many, because of how similar it is to most other board games, technically you could really consider it as one. But anyway, it really doesn't matter. Twister is still near and dear to my heart. I remember seeing it on Toy Story films a whole lot, especially, you know, like the cover of it, and trust me, it is still a real good board game at the time growing up, and that's exactly why I am very fond of Twister. Number 4 is Mousetrap. Now obviously, this is a board game in which ultimately you play against a whole bunch of other people. However, you're basically helping with, you know, setting up all the mousetraps first. You know, obviously you're just getting everything all set up, and then it is a free-for-all. You're ultimately going up against each other to try to trap your opponents and hopefully try to be the last mouse standing. And this is really fun because you can basically set the game up any way you want. You know, you can set up a trap anywhere on the board, like let's say like in one area of it, and then maybe set another trap on another area of the board game. It really doesn't matter. This is basically based on strategy, and because ultimately your end game is to trap all of your other opponents, and so basically you really have to figure out the best strategy to be able to win this game. And trust me, obviously it is a lot of fun getting to trap a whole bunch of other people, usually the safe way. And this game is probably the best way that really exemplifies that. You know, Mousetrap, you're really just going after your opponents, which basically are the rats, and ultimately you're just having a whole lot of fun doing so while winning the game as well. And Mousetrap may not be as synonymous now as it was before, but trust me, it is one that I grew up loving. At number 3 is Hungry Hungry Hippo. Now again, this might be another game that may not be technically considered as a board game per se, but trust me, it technically still counts as one, in which ultimately you're just going after each other and literally just getting every single marble there is as possible. And yeah, basically the objective here is that you're ultimately playing as one of 4 hippos, and literally it's just a free-for-all. You're just literally going after as many marbles as possible, and ultimately whoever has the most marbles wins their game. And basically you can do this any way you want, best 3 out of 5 or 2 out of 3 if it's like just a 2-player thing. But either way though, it's basically the same objective. You're literally just gobbling up as many of the marbles that are there as humanly possible, and literally it can be like fast paced as well, because you really gotta be quick to get every single marble there is on that particular table, and ultimately it is very difficult to do when you got 3 other players that are just as hungry to get them as you are. Again, this is another game just like Twister that it may not technically be considered as a board game, but to me I definitely feel like it is, because ultimately you're still using the same kind of techniques that you would do with other board games, and ultimately it's just getting all of the marbles there is. And unlike most other board games, there's pretty much just no strategy. It's just get all the marbles. That's pretty much it, and I really like that. Fast-paced action at its finest, and that's exactly what Hungry Hippo was. At number 2, it is Trouble. Now, this is a board game that I remember playing quite a bit during the mid-2000s, and especially during the latter half of the 2000s as well. Trust me, I remember it very fondly, because just like with, like other board games, this one here is basically just complete everything before everybody else does. You basically have 4 or 6 marbles, and ultimately you're just getting a whole lap around the entire board, and ultimately you're getting all the way back to your particular area in which you're placing every single one of your balls there before all the other competitors do so. And remember, it's basically about 4 or 5 of them, so as long as you're able to get all of them around for a full lap and back to your area first, you basically win the entire thing. And trust me, it's about getting lucky here in this game. You have to really do it before everybody else does, because if you can't get the most amount of skips possible to be able to get there quickly, trust me, you're going to lose out. And it is still a board game that is near and dear to my heart, even though I don't think I remember having one right now here at this house. Trust me, it was a game that I remember playing quite a bit when I was a kid, because literally I just never wanted to stop playing it. Literally just putting all the balls around a lap. It's literally like a NASCAR race, literally. You're going around a whole bunch of laps to ultimately, you get all of your marbles back to your area, which of course is the checkered flag. Trust me, it is very similar to auto racing. Of course, if you're wondering what is the game that I still play the most here whenever I am downstairs with my family, it is Uno, obviously. But still, Trouble is a game that I wish that we still had, because I really loved playing that game growing up, and it is still near and dear to my heart. In fact, if there is another board game area nearby me, ultimately I am going to try to see if there's one here, so that way I can maybe pick one up very soon. So that way me and Ryan can really go after it at each other. But if there is one board game that I'm still fond of the most, it is Candyland. And trust me, and next to Monopoly and Scrabble, this is the board game that is probably the most synonymous to every board game fan there is out there. Trust me, if you know board games, you have to know what Candyland is. Basically, it's you and a whole bunch of other competitors, and ultimately you're trying to get to the home castle of where King Candy lives, so that way you can get all the free candy you want. And basically you're just going through a whole bunch of areas while also trying to get ahead of all of your other competitors without falling into traps of your own. And ultimately it's pretty much just like all the other games that I just mentioned. First one there to the castle of King Candy, you basically win it all. And at times, obviously, I really feel like that the board game is really part of my life, because I used to enjoy eating candy quite a bit, and I still do, obviously. So literally every night after I play that game, ultimately whenever I'm sleeping, I would dream of being in Candyland, ultimately having all the candy that I want. That's basically what this game is all about. You ultimately are just around a whole bunch of candy canes or M&Ms or stuff like that, but still the main objective is to ultimately get to the castle first. And yeah, like I said before, next to Monopoly and Scrabble, if you do not know exactly what Candyland is, you do not know board games, because ultimately that is a game that almost everyone has played at least once growing up. And trust me, that is a board game that I still remember playing quite a bit. I love that game. It is a very good board game, and trust me, it is my overall favorite board game of all time. Obviously, with Gen Z and a whole bunch of other generations that are getting into the nostalgia, obviously, board games is another area in which that nostalgia factor thrives. And trust me, with all the board games that I just mentioned, as well as a whole bunch of other ones, board games could very well see a revival very soon. And so obviously, if you are a huge fan of board games, trust me, it is very good to pick up one of the board games that I just mentioned, or anyone that you see that you really love, and really just bring it to your party or ultimately to your club, and ultimately just have a whole bunch of fun with your friends. Because trust me, board games are just like video games, but ultimately you actually have a whole lot of fun in person with a whole bunch of other friends playing them. Trust me, it doesn't matter where you are. If you've seen a board game that you remember playing as a kid, trust me, it brings back memories. And these were ultimately before video games. And so ultimately, if you really want to relive that old spirit in which there was a time before video games, board games were it. And trust me, I remember playing board games a lot before I started playing on the PlayStation 2 and all the other PlayStation consoles that I have. And trust me, even though I don't have any board games anymore, I still wish that I had quite a few of them. Because trust me, board games, they are like the physical version of video games, and they are a lot of fun. Alright, that's gonna do it for this video. Obviously, those are just some of my favorite board games of all time, but I would like to hear from you. So let me know right now, what are some of your favorite board games? Feel free to let me know down in the comments below, and I'll be more interested in hearing what they are. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you'd like to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when my latest video is released. Comment below for future suggestions for all my videos, whether it's vlogs, plushes, or challenges, you name it. Leave it in the comments below and I'll do my best to make them. As always, follow me on my social media. All the links are in the description below. That's gonna do it for this video. I hope you're having another great day. And as always, I hope to see you all again in another video very soon. So long, everybody.